Welcome back to the One Decision Away podcast. I'm your host, Elijah Meng. In this one, we're going to talk about when you should and should not trust yourself. And really, in the big picture, you should always trust yourself. But this is specifically what we're getting into here, is differentiating between fear-based programming and intuition or inspiration. So, I'm sure it's very clear to you already that you should trust yourself when you're being led by intuition and by inspiration to make a decision, to make some kind of change or move in your life, take action on something. And you should not trust yourself when you're being led by fear-based programming and conditioning. That's so often it's instilled in nearly every single one of us as we're growing up, from society, from our parents, from people who want the best for us, but they don't generally know that the best for us may be taking a completely different route than what seems safe, or comfortable or promising, right? So I'm going to use the general example of starting a business because it's something that a lot of us can relate to. Even if you haven't started a business, you've probably gotten a business idea. You've probably been inspired at some point. But then maybe it didn't last that long. The excitement around that idea kind of wore off, and then it just never ended up happening, right? So often, as soon as we get that idea, there's two parts of ourselves that want to take control. There's the inspiration, the intuition part that says, yes, go for it, do it, do it, do it. And then there's the fear-based programming part, where it's either buying into some kind of fear-based programming that you have around failure. Maybe you're afraid of failing. Maybe you're afraid of what that will look like to other people. Or maybe you're afraid of just stepping outside of your comfort zone in the ways necessary in order to actually start that business. Maybe you're afraid of the risk. Maybe you're afraid of losing the money, that you need to invest into that business. Whatever it could be, when we let that fear-based programming take over, often it just leads to inaction. We just don't do anything about it. But when we let that intuition and inspiration continue to propel us forward into the execution and fulfillment of the idea, that's when it'll happen, and that's when major change will be made in our life. And that's when we can also continue to program a new way of being into ourselves, right? There's one main way that you change, and it's by changing. And it sounds stupid, but seriously, you have to take some kind of first step to get you propelled in the direction of that change. And then every time you take another step, it's like making another vote for this new version of yourself that you're wanting to become, or that you are becoming and stepping into, right? So the more that you follow your intuition, the more it becomes natural for you to follow your intuition, and the more that you're just going to be continually guiding yourself down your path because you have that place of internal guidance within you. Versus the more that you follow the fear-based programming and conditioning, so the fears in your mind, the patterns of procrastination or perfectionism, needing things to be perfect before you actually put it together and put it out there, or get everything together and start your business and launch it. Those are aspects of fear-based conditioning, because it's like, oh, I need to make sure it's perfect before I put it out there, because what if it's not perfect? It's based on fear, and it's based on the idea that it needs to be perfect before you put it out there. And obviously, I'm just using a general example. This can apply to many different situations in different ways. There are certain things where you do want to have it completely dialed in, and that's important. But it's a little different from perfectionism, in the sense that you're afraid to put something out that isn't perfect. Or you're afraid to put yourself in a situation that's risky and uncomfortable and unfamiliar, but it's more aligned with the future version of yourself that you see, into the future. The person that you want to become, the life that you want to create for yourself, the life that you want to live. And so there's one main factor that comes to mind when we're talking about differentiating between the programming and intuition. And that's your feeling. Because programming and fear has a very distinct feeling. And so does inspiration. Inspiration is a very distinct feeling that we can all put our finger on. We're all familiar with that feeling of inspiration, of just pure clarity, of excitement, of the energy that comes with our idea. But here's the thing, is most of us, when we get an idea, we don't use the energy that comes with that idea, the excitement behind it, the passion that comes with the idea to immediately propel us into action. We wait. And then the excitement, the energy that came with that idea kind of fades away slowly. And then the weight of that fear-based programming becomes heavier, and the weight of that intuition and inspiration, that feeling of inspiration, becomes lighter, and then the fear wins. And then we're just repeating the same exact cycles in our life. And I use starting a business as an example because that's something a lot of us can probably relate to. I've experienced that multiple times. I've experienced many times where I have gotten a great idea, but then it's like, as I sit on it and the inspiration kind of dwindles and the logic, the rationalization, the programming, the weight of that increases, I end up doing nothing with the idea. And though it could have been a great idea, I just won't do it. But this could also go for relationships. Like maybe at first, like you have a really good connection with someone and you're excited and you can feel your heart kind of opening to this potential new connection. It's exciting. And then maybe you go on a couple more dates and it's like, yeah. And then you start to really get in your head about it and you start to think, okay, well, maybe they're only going on this date with me because, they like me as a friend, but nothing more. Yeah, I'm just throwing shit out there. You get what I'm saying, though. Like, you'll start to get in your head. You'll start to, that conditioning, that programming, maybe it's some programming that was kind of imprinted in you from your past relationship and how that relationship ended. It left you with some imprint in your mind of, dang, I'm not good enough in fill in the blank, whatever area. I'm not good enough in this area for an actual great and successful, fulfilling relationship. And so that kind of creeps back into your mind in the start of this new potential relationship. And all of a sudden, you're talking yourself out of going on that next date. You're talking yourself out of reaching out to them and initiating, another connection. You're talking yourself out of pursuing this relationship, even though in your heart, your intuition, the inspiration, you can feel it. You can feel the love. You can feel the excitement, the passion. It feels good. But maybe it's too good to be true. Maybe once they find out this about me, then, they'll see that I'm probably not good enough for them. Or whatever it looks like. I want to use these examples because, you may be able to relate with one thing, not so much with the other. So just to really drive this point home of how the programming always seems to creep in and how you can identify when it's creeping in so that you can just override it. Let me give you an example. So speaking of relationships, yes, another example. Speaking of relationships, I got into the relationship that I'm in now about a year and 2 months ago or so. And when it was happening, I had gone in with the intention. I completely manifested this relationship. It was like I had no anticipation of anything happening like that. But I just happened to get very clear on what I wanted at that time and just allowed myself to fully accept where I was at and I'm not gonna like try and give you all the details of it, just to keep focused on the point here. But I completely manifested that relationship, and it was funny because my intuition was like, "Go, yep, do it, pursue it," and so I was doing it, and I could tell in the whole process of pursuing this relationship, um, there were so many times where my mind was trying to make itself relevant. It was trying to make the fears, the programming relevant to the situation. And it was saying, oh, but, we don't want to do this, or we want to avoid this, or just like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I don't remember every single which way it showed up for me, but it was a lot. There was a lot of fear in moving into this relationship. But that part of just some kind of internal knowing that just do it, this is right, took over. And I was in such a place where I was feeling very aligned within myself. I could tell, I could very clearly see the two different sides in moving into this relationship. I could see and feel the part that was like, yep, let's go, this is great. And I could see and feel the part that was like, no, stop. Like, I don't know. We need to protect ourselves, essentially. And it was trying to find all the little ways that I might get hurt, or trying to find the similarities between ways that I did get hurt in the past, in past relationship, whatever, and blocking myself from getting into that kind of position where that might happen again. So essentially what's happening here is there's a feeling in my heart of pursuing because it feels good. It feels aligned, it feels natural, it feels loving. And then there's also a part around the outside that's like playing the guard and trying to just protect myself from feeling the pain that I had felt in the past, and rejection, or feeling not good enough, by allowing myself to get into a relationship, get into a situation where there is then the potential of being the potential experience of feeling like I'm not good enough, or like maybe this relationship ends up not going anywhere, and then it's, I'm kind of back down and not feeling so good about myself or whatever. But I kept pursuing it, and Maggie and I both, my girlfriend Maggie, we both talked about this as it was happening, because we both became aware of it. And so that helped as well in just recognizing what was happening and seeing, it's like seeing the big picture. It's like I'm zooming out and I'm overlooking everything it's like you're at a football game or soccer game, whatever, and you're in the stadium and you're looking down on the field. You can see the whole thing. You can see everything that's happening. You can see the love and you can see the fear, and you can see the ways that they're kind of battling and, having at it. And that the love is true and the fear is an illusion. The fear is fear. It's based on imaginary stories of us potentially not being good enough that we're making up in our head. And so the fear is completely, it's an illusion, but the love is real. The love is that intuitive knowing within us. And this brings me to something that I recently wrote about, and I think I might have talked about it in my last episode. But it's like, how do I know that love is the source of what I am? Like, love is the truth and fear is just an illusion. And how do I know that I am love? That's what I'm made of. That is the truth. That is the true fundamental law of the universe, is love. Is everything is created from love. Because if I hadn't found myself in a place where I felt separate from love, then I wouldn't find myself seeking to return to it. So if that makes sense, essentially another way of putting it is like, why would I find myself seeking to return to a place of love if that wasn't home, essentially. It's like, it's where we emanate from. It's the truth of our being is love. And only when we experience the separation from love do we feel that disconnection, and then we need to return to that connection to our source, which is love. So I don't know if that really helps in what I'm talking about, but it came to mind because I was writing about that recently. And I think it's a good point here, because if you're looking down at that whole playing field, you're looking down at the whole game that's going on in your mind between the fear-based conditioning and programming and the intuition and inspiration and excitement and love and passion. You know what to follow and what to trust by how it feels. So if love is the truth of your being, then you trust loving thoughts and loving feelings. You trust the intuition, because the mind, the fear, the programming is going to tell you that something that the money is an obstacle, and oh, you can't get past that, and oh, I wish I could, pursue this idea that feels so good and so inspiring and would be so freaking awesome. But, the money is the obstacle. I don't know how I can come up with $100,000. Like, there's hundreds of thousands of people who could give you $100,000 for that idea, if only you took the next step and didn't talk yourself out of it just from the jump to begin with. Like, there is an infinite amount of money that we have access to, if only we didn't buy into those bullshit limitations that come up in our mind. As soon as we have a great idea, for most people, as soon as that idea comes up, we start talking ourselves out of it. It's fear-based programming. And that is exactly how you can tell, because you feel the fear. And it's really hard sometimes to get into that state of fear and then get out of it, or talk yourself through it, talk yourself beyond, like, move through it, and that's like, well, that's the thing, is sometimes, you may just need to talk yourself around or through something, but there genuinely may be a lot of fear that you have unprocessed in your energy system, in your body, in your heart. And so that's where you need to go back to one of the podcast episodes where I talk about letting go of emotions, how to stop letting emotions get in your way, how, the 4-step process of releasing emotions, and how to actually release it, get that shit out of here, so that you can become the person that you want to become. Because it's not really about just creating the life that you want to create, building the business, having the relationship and the house, the cars, the wardrobe, all that kind of stuff that you want. That's just a part of becoming the person that you are here to step into and become. And you're going to become that person by purifying yourself of everything that you're not, which is the fear. It's an illusion. The negative and limiting and false beliefs. Because you're pretty perfect. You're supposed to be who you are. You came here with the intention of being who you are. And only the judgment and comparison and competition of our mind will tell us otherwise. But it doesn't take into consideration, what intention did you come into this life with? And typically all those fears are just based on the idea that you are just a physical human body, and as soon as you die, and that's it, and you're no longer, and you only live once. But those fears are so much more prominent when you do not understand the eternal reality of consciousness and of your being. And so, that's a fundamental aspect in getting yourself through that fear, is understanding who you actually are. And so that's why I talk about that so much in my podcast. But anyway, essentially, the other end of the spectrum of what I'm talking about here is, obviously, fear feels like fear. It's not really hard to identify what these things feel like, but so often we get caught up in our mental processes and everything that we don't actually have the awareness in that moment of what's happening. We're too in it to actually see what's happening. One of my favorite ways of putting this is, You can't read the label when you're in the jar. And so it can be hard to differentiate between the two and realize, like, oh, I'm just telling myself a bullshit story based on programming and fear versus, no, this is actually my intuition and inspiration leading me to do this. And if I just follow that and shut out, like, feel the fear, release it, process it, allow yourself to feel it, don't identify with it, don't believe it, you know? And don't perpetuate it by continuing to run that story over and over again through your mind. So that's how you differentiate, is feeling. You know, you feel love, you feel the excitement and inspiration. And your mind is going to come up with stories. But you know that the love, the inspiration, the intuition is all powerful. It is so much more powerful. And it knows there are forces in the universe, in life, that are working in ways that you can't even see, understand, or comprehend. You know, maybe you can. I don't know. But I'm just saying that to make a point. That it's bigger than you. If you have a great idea that is led by love, that's led by passion, and especially if that idea is going to lead to an improved world, an improved life for others and yourself and, you know, society, then wouldn't you think it's in life's best interest to actually help you with that idea? And see, like, when you really have this understanding of consciousness as the nature of reality, or as like a fundamental building block of reality, because reality wouldn't exist without consciousness being conscious of it, then you realize, like, life isn't actually against you as much as we're led and taught to believe. You know, so often we're taught that life is a test, that life is hard, that it's supposed to be that way, that you're incompetent, you're not good enough, and you're here to actually prove that you are. That you are born of evil, that you're inherently bad, that you're a sinner, and you need to prove otherwise. It's bullshit. You're here as a creator. You have infinite possibilities as to what you can create. And that can be great things or terrible things. You can do all of it. You can do whatever you want. You're going to reap the consequences, but you're free to do whatever you want. And you're also so free that you're putting yourself in a cage willingly, because you're buying into that story of fear. The weight of fear is stronger than the weight of love, because you haven't trusted in love enough. You haven't used that mechanism. That's the wrong word. You haven't followed your intuition enough to know that it's something you can depend on. It's something that will not lead you astray. And also that, you know, you're completely fine and you're completely safe, and there's really nothing to fear at all, because you are an eternal being. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all I want to talk about. But I wasn't going to, but that point just ends up coming up in every single one of my episodes, because I don't know, but it just does, and it's probably for a reason. But it's like there's so much safety and security and love in knowing that, in knowing that you can't go wrong. So much security in knowing that security is internal, and security is a part of who you are. It's not something that you either have or you don't. It's something you can feel or not feel. You can feel insecure or you can feel secure, but you're always secure, just as a result of who you are. You're secure in the universe. Your being is love. I don't know. That's what it is. Yeah. if you want to hear more on the conversation of that, it's in every single one of my episodes pretty much. So go check it out. But anyway, I really appreciate you listening to this. Drop comment, like, subscribe if you're not already, and share this. Share it with somebody who can benefit from learning how to identify the difference between the fear-based programming and love, passion, intuition, and inspiration. And because that's a real issue, and it'll, unless you actually learn to identify and zoom out and see it from the bigger picture like that, like look at the whole playing field and what's going on, then you'll probably keep getting caught up in the traps of the mind, of that programming, and just perpetuating it. Because that's what programming is. You get programmed, and then it's like this operating system that operates based on that program. And so unless you step outside of what's going on, fix the operating system, then it's just going to keep happening. It's just going to keep happening. So, yeah, appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And you're only one decision away, seriously. Make the decision to follow your intuition instead of your fear. That's one decision. To always follow love instead of fear. To ask yourself frequently, often, am I coming from a space of fear or love? That's really all you need to know. You have a whole internal guidance system that is going to tell you exactly what to do and where to go. So follow it. Listen to it. Why not? At least try it. All right. Peace.